welcome back to my channel. So hopefully this angle isn't too weird. I am filming this standing up. There was a mishap with some gems that I need to clean up and I have not yet, so I can't rearrange things to sit down and record. So hopefully the angle's not too strange, but I am super excited to record this because it has been so long since I have done an update video. So that's what this video will be. If you like this kind of content, make sure to hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. And with that, let me update you on what I am working on. As you know, I was very busy with Animate Raleigh making Ravenna, which I did complete on time. There's some things I need to do. There's like a bit of a crown and like this neck jewel piece I need to make, but she is done to my satisfaction. So I did wear her at Animate Raleigh and she fit very well. She was very comfortable. I do have to sit a little strange because that breastplate goes down a little low, but other than that, it's pretty comfortable. But I was super happy with how she turned out, so that took me right up to Animate Raleigh, which was the first weekend of January. And then after Animate Raleigh, I was exhausted. If you want to see more about my experience, I did make a video all about guesting there. It was amazing and I had so much fun, but it was just a lot. You know, you're busy all day long talking to people, doing workshops, judging contests and such, and you know, it was just exhausting at the end. And then we drove the 9 hours back home. So the first week back, I was not too terribly productive outside of working on the embroidery for Sakizo. I was able to run some more tests on the actual fabric it will be embroidered on, which is this gold rame. I'm gonna call it rame. It seems right. As you can see, I have like the wrong stitch on this leaf. It doesn't look good, but I got it all fixed. And so for the past couple of weeks, I have been working on the panel part of my Sakizo build, working out the actual like mechanics of how this is going to work, the type of fabric, how I'm going to do the embroidery and that sort of thing. I do still need to finish the middle skirt, I guess is what you'd call it, with the flower smocking, but it turns out that I did not have enough fabric for the flower smocking. I had ordered 2 yards thinking that that would be plenty enough. So if you don't know flower smocking, I'll pop a photo or something up for you to see, but essentially you're pulling in the fabric in 4 different directions, so it's shrinking the fabric down, and I thought I had calculated it correctly and needed only 2 yards, but turns out I need 4 yards of fabric uncut because I don't want any seams in there. You'll see them, so that I can shrink it down to the amount of space that I need it to be. So I was waiting for that to arrive, ordered it from Mood because that's where I've been getting all my satin from, all my ivory satin from, but Mood just takes a little while to get here, so I moved on to the panels. The fabric did arrive several days ago, but I wanted to finish one panel so that I had everything figured out and a reference for me to duplicate 6 more times for that top skirt, because sometimes going from one costume and then shelving it for a while, or shelving part of it for a while and then moving on to another piece, I forget my thoughts, which is what my cosplay planner is for. But I was so wrapped up in Ravenna, I forgot to document some of my thoughts with the panels, so I had to go back and sort of relearn what it is that I wanted to do. But let's talk about the panels. So I was not recording as much for this first panel as I wanted to be. I started to, and then I ran into some complications and I really had to think through it, and I did a lot of trial and error. Another layer of things for me to think about to record it, but I will put what I have in the like longer tutorial video, but I'll just give you a little overview of what I did. So here is an unfinished panel, and let me tell you, I am so proud of how this looks. Like, this looks regal. It looks like expensive, which was kind of why I was going for, because I feel like she's a queen, right? I feel like she would be wearing something luxurious. And part of the luxury is definitely this satin I got from Prime Fabrics. Like, look at how gorgeous that color is, and the sheen is spectacular. And it's been wonderful to work with. It does fray a little bit, but it's nowhere near as bad as the Zelliff. So the way that this panel is built, I had originally, I actually have this example behind me. So here is my first attempt at the panel. I'm probably going to take this apart and salvage the fabric, but I accidentally like shredded some of the satin. This rame, once you stitch into it, it gets holes that are very difficult to close. So this may be a lost cause. It really just depends on if I need this gold fabric back. I do have enough satin to finish out this skirt. Here was the first thought, was to make a solid gold panel and then stitch the red satin on top, and then I would put the embroidery on that. This just, it didn't work out. The rame is so, it's not really delicate, it's very sturdy, but it wrinkles and puckers and like just sort of buckles under the strain of being stitched, that I hated the way it looked. Looking at it now, it doesn't look as bad as it did when I was hating on it earlier in the week, but I did not like the way that this looked. And there's a bit too much loose fabric in the red part of the panel that I decided to try a different route. Also, it's very flimsy. The back will be another gold panel, but even with that, it's going to be flimsy, and I wanted it to have a little sturdiness to it. The unfortunate part with wanting a little sturdiness to it is I'm going to be adding more weight to the skirt. And when I was putting everything back onto the mannequin, because it's been off of my mannequin since I started Ravenna, but when I put the like crinoline and the petticoat and the underskirt back onto the mannequin, it weighs a lot. It weighs a lot. It's all that velvet and all that steel. I decided to do an inner lining of canvas, just that simple duck canvas I use for all my corsetry stuff. It's what I had on hand. So I did that. And then I decided to do an additional layer of canvas under the satin. So what I did was I took this gold rame and I used basting glue. It is water soluble, but I'll probably never wash it off. I used basting glue to hold it against the canvas, and then I did stitch it around to secure it in place to the canvas. The reason why I did basting glue is because when you use pins, you poke holes into the rame and it looks awful. I've not yet been able to like smooth over those holes. So this might be a material that you just shouldn't pin in places that you can see. And then I stitched the red satin to a smaller piece of canvas that matched the shape of the red satin. And then I stitched the red satin and canvas to the gold satin and canvas. And that just gave a bit more sturdiness to this red fabric and filled up any little space in there that would be caused by just the layering. And it gave it this tiny, tiny bit of lift off of the gold, which I thought just made it look a little better. So like that little detail you would probably never be able to put your finger on, that just made it look a little better. And then I hid the raw edges with this gimp braid. I did wind up gluing this on first and then stitching it. It wiggles too much under my sewing machine to just pin it in place and sew it on. So I just used a little bit of Surebonder and glued it in place. I will say that the placement is not perfect, so I did use the gimp braid and like moved it in or moved it out to try and fix my outer gold edge width. She's not perfect. I think it might be like a side panel or something. I did learn a lot with making this first panel. I'm still going to use it, I'm pretty sure. At least I could change my mind later, but I just really don't want to waste any more materials. So I'll probably still use it, but all the others I will correct some of the mistakes that I made on this one, but I think it looks pretty good so far. So the embroidery, I have not gone into the embroidery part, I think at all yet. I actually started the embroidery months ago when we were waiting for more fabric or something to arrive. I started on this. And this is actually entirely hand drawn. I took half of it and I just sat down with a pen and a piece of paper and then the reference image, and I drew out something similar to what is actually in the artwork. The artwork's kind of hard to make out, and I had to make some choices, and I had to change the like width and the height of it to fit my proportion. So it's not an exact replica, but it's relatively close. So I drew out half of it, and then I took it into Illustrator and I mirrored it, and then I traced over all of my drawing and then like thickened up some lines and just made some edits in Illustrator. And then I took it into the Bernina embroidery software that came with my machine and digitized the file, selected the type of stitching that I wanted, added in some decorative stitching into these empty spaces, and just, you know, played around with on there until I liked it. I did a million, it feels, but it was really only like 15 different trials. I was using just whatever embroidery that I had on muslin to test out what the stitches looked like and everything before I committed to using the gold thread. Originally, I was going to stitch this directly onto the red, but I was afraid of getting puckering around the edges. So I nixed that idea, and then I was like, well, maybe I'll still just stitch it onto red satin. But then when I looked at the artwork again, everything within this design was gold, but they were different shades of gold. So that gave me the idea of using scraps of the rame and then embroidering it directly on there. This rame does not like to be embroidered on. It pulls and kind of falls apart in places that do too much embroidery. So I did have to do some changes in the stitching. Like down here, I had to do I don't know what you call it, it's more of like a flat stitch versus a satin stitch because it just disintegrated the fabric. So I did have to do a couple of trials on my scrap fabric before I discovered what it is that I wanted. So once I digitized it, I found out quickly though that I could not get it this size. My machine does not go this big. So I tried multi-hooping. For those of you that don't do machine embroidering, multi-hooping is kind of where like you would do this much, and then the machine will mark a few places for you, like just little X's, and then you're supposed to like unhoop it and then change the direction using those X's to line up your needle, and then it should be able to pick up embroidering the next part like into the space that you moved it to so that you don't have to chop up your image. I couldn't figure that out. I could not for the life of me figure out, like I just couldn't line it up. It was a struggle. I feel like it's probably my design. My design is very complicated, and for someone who's never done machine embroidery before, and this was my first attempt at multi-hooping, it was too much for me. So I gave up months ago when I was first testing this out and decided to split it into 3 pieces. So this is the first piece, this top part, and they have the second piece somewhere over here, and then the third piece. I tried to hide the cut lines where I could hide them in the embroidery. So there's a cut line here, there's a cut line here. And so the idea is, you know, I take the 3 pieces and then I sew them individually onto the panel, which is what I did here. I did actually Surebonder this down first, just like a little bit in certain places to hold it where I needed it to. It made it so much easier to keep everything lined up. And then I did a zigzag stitch all the way around, which you can kind of see here that it did mess up my satin stitch a little bit, but it was the best stitch because I cut too close to my embroidery and did not leave myself any little area to do a normal straight stitch to hold this in place. So I did a zigzag. I think it looks fine. It does get hidden a lot in most of the embroidery. So I think when I do the next panel, I will leave myself a millimeter or 2 of fabric outside of the embroidery so that I could just stitch it down normally. So that's the basis of the embroidery. Now I need to hide all the raw edges and really hide those cut lines and make this sparkle. So I've already started the beading here on the bottom. I'm just doing some simple gold seed beads, and then I've started a little bit of sequencing. That's going to go up and hide this cut line, so I'll mirror it over here even though there's not a cut line. And I'm going to do more beading all the way around it, add sequins and beads wherever I feel like will really add sparkle. And I've got some gold, I don't know what you call them, they're like round gold things that I'm going to put. So like there's going to be one here to cover up that hole, one goes in the middle, there's going to be some here, like everywhere where there's like these little blank holes, those were purposely left empty to mark where I need to put these gems or whatever it is I'm going to put there. And then there's going to be more like sparkle and gems. And then the rame left these little holes in here when the needle went through. I think I'm going to cover those up with tiny gems. So that's my first panel, and I'm very excited about it. So all the gold panels are cut out. I do need to cut out a couple more though because we lost them in our experiments. I'm going to finish beading that, sequencing, bejeweling it, and then add the backing to it. I'm going to finish this panel and then it's getting shelved so I can move on to the flower smocking and finish up the underskirt first. So that's the plan. I'm hoping I can work my way through all this embroidery and sequencing over the weekend so that I can just move on to the flower smocking next week. And once I have the flower smocking done and the underskirt, then I will be moving back to these panels. So it's a lot. It's a lot of handwork, but I think it's really paying off. So that's where I'm at right now with my Sakizo build. I do have some things coming up in the next few weeks. So in case you haven't seen my Instagram, I will be guesting at MegaCon Orlando. I'm super excited. It's kind of a big deal for me to be part of such a big con. It's such an honor. I cannot wait to do it. So I will have a booth. They're going to have like a special little cosplay section where we will all be. So I'll have a booth in that section. Of course, I'll have all my merchandise there in case you're interested. Or if you just want to come up and say hi, I still have some of my special gifts for my followers and subscribers. So if you come up to my booth, code word Ducky as always, let me know that you're a follower and I will give you a little special gift. And of course, if you want to see Ravenna in person, that will be the place to do it because I will be wearing Ravenna, I'll be wearing Freerin, Aurora, and I think I'm going to do Belle because I'm going to give myself a bit of a wig break, and I might do Barbie somewhere in between. It just depends. So it is a Thursday through Sunday, February 6th through 9th, I believe are the dates. And I will be doing just one panel, I think, this time, which will be on Build Books. Yeah, so that's the first weekend in February. Before that, I have a short business trip just earlier in that week. That's gonna be a very busy week for me, so I'm not gonna get much done crafting-wise, but it's going to be an amazing experience. So with that, I'm gonna hop off so I can get back to sequencing. If you like this video, make sure to hit the like button, make sure to subscribe if you're interested, and I will see you all in my next video.